My name is Kara and I'm a home cook. It is a new year and I'm here today with 3 high fiber from scratch vegetarian dinner ideas. These are meals I return to nearly every week, and today we are going to make tofu rice bowl, bean burgers, and a dal. You can find all the links and recipes in the description of this video. First though, over on my newsletter Home Food, I have another free printable list of 30 plus pantry focused dinner ideas, including these 3. The printable has a list of all the meals for quick reference, blank spaces to add your own go-to meals, along with a QR code that brings you to a page with all of the linked recipes. Pin this up in your kitchen or on your fridge, and the next time you're wondering what to make for dinner, reference the list and get some inspiration. I'll include a link to the printable below. All right, let's get into the meals. The first one is a recipe of mine called Tofu Rice Bowl. I've been making this tofu every single week for at least a decade. It's so easy and it has a huge payoff. I love this recipe because it is very pantry friendly and I can customize the add-ons with whatever is in the fridge or is in season at the time. So the first thing I'm going to do is make some rice. I like to make rice in the Instant Pot. I used to be a loyal rice cooker user, but the one that I had a non-stick lining, and I try to avoid PFAS and non-stick coatings wherever I can. I had an Instant Pot already that I was using to make yogurt, so I realized that I should just use the stainless steel inner pot on the Instant Pot to make rice. Sometimes I miss the fluffiness of a rice cooker, but this method I found to be pretty effective. So I always rinse the rice 3 times directly in the Instant Pot bowl and then dip it to drain the water out in the sink. I try to agitate the rice to release some of the starches. After about 3 rinses, I then add water in a 1-to-1 ratio. In the Instant Pot, I cook it on low pressure for 12 minutes and then I turn off the keep warm button to help with sticking. I actually have another kitchen cheat sheet printable linked in the description as well. You can see that here, and it has my instructions on how to cook rice in the Instant Pot, along with stovetop methods and other helpful kitchen info. So next I'm going to press the tofu. This tofu is from PRINTABLE. PRINTABLE is a packaging-free store here in Brooklyn, New York. I've been shopping for them for years now. They sell packaging-free items either in compostable paper or in glass like this, which you return. They offer delivery and you can just hand your containers back with your next delivery. So this tofu is a locally made one from Ithaca soy. I don't have a tofu press. I don't think they're super necessary. I always just wrap the tofu in a clean dish towel, put another plate on top, and then balance something heavier like a stack of cookbooks, or here I'm using a can of tomatoes. I am going to let the tofu press and drain for about 20 minutes. So I have a link to the recipe in the description below, but it is so easy. I don't measure anything anymore. I heat some oil in a cast iron pan and then I break the tofu into bite-sized pieces with my hands. I then drizzle soy sauce over the tofu directly in the pan. I add a few tablespoons of nutritional yeast, hot sauce, and some dried pepper flakes. I typically like to use a vinegar-based hot sauce like Crystal because I think the acidic hot sauce lends some great flavor. I was out of it this day though, so I just use this Yellowbird hot sauce that I really like. Sometimes too, I add cumin seeds as well. So I let the tofu crisp in the pan for a while. I'm sometimes adding more oil to get it nice and crispy. Once the tofu is done, I'm going to put together a bowl. I like to use just whatever I have in the fridge. I usually have both limes and cilantro, so I squeeze the lime over the rice, and then I like to either fry an egg or use a Kewpie mayo for kind of like a creamy, rich moment. Here I am slicing up some cucumbers I had in the fridge and then adding a sauerkraut for the probiotics. It's not super photogenic, but I've been adding a couple tablespoons of chia seeds to the rice just for added fiber and omega-3s. Other times of the year, I'll add cherry tomatoes, quick pickled radishes, or I'll make a cabbage slaw. This meal is just so good. It's really one of my favorite things to make for dinner, and it makes great leftovers. Try it out and let me know what you think. So another meal I make pretty much once a week is bean burgers. I like to make my burger buns from scratch, so let's do that together today. I consider this a convenience meal because I freeze these buns. I slice them in half and then store them in a freezer bag. I love a toasted bun, so I toast the bun in the toaster directly from the freezer, and it makes for a really quick meal. So the recipe for the buns is from King Arthur Baking. I'll include a link to the recipe below. It is a yeasted recipe, so it's fast and simple. I mix all-purpose flour, warm water, room temperature butter, egg, sugar, sea salt, and yeast together. I store my yeast in the freezer, and I love SAF instant yeast. It's just so reliable. I've actually never said that out loud. Is it SAF or SAF? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. So I mix it all up in the bowl of my stand mixer and then let it double in size for about an hour. Once the dough has risen, I cut the dough into 6 pieces. The recipe calls for 8, but I like my buns to be a little bit bigger. So I shape them and then I flatten them into burger bun shapes with the palm of my hand, and then I let them rise for another hour. I just use another sheet pan as the lid here. So once they are nice and puffy, I like to brush on melted butter for color. I do like sesame seeds on my buns, but since I toast them, I found that the sesame seeds mostly just fall off and burn inside of the toaster. So I leave them off now. Once they are cool, I will cut them in half and store them in the freezer. To make the burger patties, I follow the easy bean burger recipe from Lucas Vulture's book, Veggie Burgers Every Which Way. If you are a vegetarian and love a homemade burger, you need this cookbook. So you can use canned beans, but of course I love to cook beans from scratch. So these are beans I think we actually cooked together a few videos ago. So I had stored some in the freezer and then I thawed them out in the refrigerator. For this recipe, I'll use any type of bean. Usually a white or red bean is my favorite here, but I've made these before with black beans as well. So I weigh out the beans, I mash them up, and I add a beaten egg and chopped parsley. I've used cilantro and dill to replace the parsley here before too. The recipe calls for either grated Parmesan or nutritional yeast. I think it's just easier and cheaper to use nutritional yeast. I typically weigh everything in this recipe just because it's easier for me. But that said, since nutritional yeast is so lightweight, I measure that with a measuring cup. I then add Dijon mustard, or really any other type of mustard, salt, pepper, lemon juice, and breadcrumbs. I will link how I make breadcrumbs below, but I love to store breadcrumbs in the freezer. I have also replaced these breadcrumbs with hemp seeds, so that's also an option. I let the mixture sit for about 10 minutes and then I form them into 4 patties and fry them in a hot cast iron skillet for a few minutes. It's just really quick and easy. All right, now let's put together a burger. I am using mayo, ketchup, and topping it up with sauerkraut. I'm typically a Kewpie mayo girl, but I've always heard of Duke's mayo, so I wanted to give it a try when I saw it at my grocery store. It's a good mayo, but I think Kewpie is better, but it's definitely solid. So the ketchup is a local one made by Beth's Farm Kitchen. Really great artisanal tasting ketchup. And the sauerkraut is local too, made by Real Pickles. I love this meal. It's such a comforting and nostalgic dinner. To round it out, I'd maybe make a quick green salad or roast some sweet potatoes or another starchy vegetable as a side. So the final meal today is another freezer-friendly meal and so good for fiber with the lentils. I'm following a recipe from Rainbow Plant Life for her restaurant-style dal. Like beans, I like to soak lentils with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. I really think it makes a digestive difference. I'll soak lentils usually from anywhere from an hour to 6 hours. To make the dal, I started with coconut oil, chopped onion, and some chopped leeks that I had on hand, grated ginger, and finely sliced garlic. And then I pulled together a spice mixture of curry powder, garam masala, coriander, turmeric, and let that bloom in the fat of the onion and garlic mixture for about a minute. I then poured in some water and the drained lentils, and I cooked that for about 30 minutes to soften the lentils. So typically I eat dal with white rice, but today I had yogurt I wanted to use up, so I decided to make some naan instead. The recipe I like to follow is from Erin Jean McDowell's book, Savory Baking, which is probably my most used yeasted baking book. I mixed up the all-purpose flour, instant dry yeast, warm water, room temperature Greek yogurt, and then some ghee. I mixed that up and let it rise for an hour. When they were nice and soft, I added a can of tomatoes. I only had fire roasted tomatoes on hand this day, but that worked out great. The reason you don't want to add the tomatoes earlier is that the acid in the tomatoes can keep the lentils from softening. And then I like a smoother and creamier dal, so I used an immersion blender to blend up most of the soup. Once the naan dough had doubled in size, I cut it into 10 pieces and shaped them into balls. I let those dough balls rest for another 15 minutes under a clean dish towel. I rolled them out and tried to keep them in a circular shape as much as possible. And then I cooked them in a dry, hot cast iron skillet while I tried to not set off the fire alarm. So I decided to turn some of this dal into a freezer meal. So I used my beloved 743 Weck jars to store it. Once again, you can freeze in glass, but you have to use a container like this without any shoulders, and you have to leave an inch of empty space or head space at the top of the container. I will also let this cool in the refrigerator before I label it and put it in the freezer. And that was my third go-to healthy high fiber dinner. You can find all of the links below along with that free kitchen printable. Thanks for coming along with me today. If you are enjoying my channel, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time on Home Food TV.